as we look at this last enterprise budget, we'll actually look at two enterprise budgets, but this last crop one we're gonna look at is one for corn. It's the same as the watermelon budget that we just looked over, but there's just gonna be a little bit more detail to it. So I'm gonna point out a few things, and this is how we'll set up our budgets that we do and that we actually set up in class, very similar to these. And so the difference is instead of just having it simply as one column as an amount per acre, we now have separated into some additional columns, and the only reason we do that is it does give us more information. So what we do is we still have our same categories. This particular enterprise budget is for corn for 1 acre. We have our revenue, our variable costs, which we're labeling as operating expenses, our fixed costs, which are our ownership expenses. So everything's the same, but we've quantified things a little more. So in the revenue section, what we'll do is we'll list the item that we've got for sale. We'll include a column that's called units, and then a column that's called quantity. And so the quantity for a crop enterprise is going to be the yield that we expect. Again, remember, this is budget, so it's estimated or expected yields. So we have an expected 105 bushel yield. So the unit is how we measure the product that we're looking at. The quantity is how much of it we would have. The selling price is again estimated, but that's the price, and it's given per unit. So this would be $5 per bushel and an expected selling price. So our total revenue over here is calculated as the yield we expect times the selling price that we're expecting, and we get a total revenue per acre that's expected of $525. Okay? We do the exact same thing in the operating expenses. It kind of depends on the product and what we know and have on that product in terms of how much of each one. So for example, seed, we're giving it in thousands, and then we're giving the quantity, and then the price for that amount of quantity. So in other words, when we find the total value of the seed, we're going to take the price of $2.95 per thousand and multiply it by 28. Let's take one that's maybe just a little bit easier. Here's one in pounds. Our fertilizer's in pounds. So if we take the nitrogen is in pounds, and it says that we're going to have 140 pounds of nitrogen we're expecting to put on per acre, and the price per pound is 50 cents per pound. So to get the total price in the amount column per acre, we're going to take the pounds we're going to use times the price per pound, and we get the amount that's in the acre. Some of them, however, we're just going to give a value per acre, and sometimes we quote the price like this one that you see in pesticides. So for example, this one is given as, this is how much it costs us per acre to put on pesticides. So the quantity is for every acre, so an acre is the units. So then this price of $28.50 is our overall value per acre, because we're doing it just on the acre basis. You see the machinery variable cost the same way, there per acre. Labor, on the other hand, is something that's given per hour. So in other words, we think we're going to have 2.1 hours of labor at $12 per hour, and so that's a total amount per acre of $25.20. So basically what you see is all the same information, but just more detailed. So we have a little bit more background. It does help us, especially with things like fertilizer, because then we can look back and say, okay, I budgeted that I'm going to use about 140 pounds of nitrogen, 60 phosphorus, and 60 potash. I can see that I put that in. That's what I was expecting to budget. These are the prices I thought I was going to get. And then when we really do come and actually walk through the process and use those items, we can also see how close we were to our budget. Then we'll know how close we were to those profit levels we were expecting when we started the year out. Again, the interest is going to be just the same as what we did before. So as we think through interest, we're going to total up our variable costs. So remember, our formula for interest was to take the total variable cost times the interest rate times the time of a half, because we figure it's for about 6 months or half of the year. So interest operating expenses for 6 months, this is the total interest expense, or excuse me, the total variable costs up to this point. A rate of 6% at a half or 6 months gives us total variable costs of $10.62. So we get our total operating expenses. We do things just the same as before. Revenue minus total operating expenses gives us the income over our variable costs. Again, this one has $108 income over the variable cost. So consequently, that means that yes, this is something that's going to work for us this year. We're going to go ahead and produce corn because we can easily cover the variable costs. Now let's see if we're covering fixed costs and making any profit per acre. If we go to our ownership expenses, the ownership costs are the same ones we talked about. So we got machinery, depreciation, interest, taxes, and insurance, land charge, and miscellaneous overhead. Those values are given in just an amount per acre. So I put 1 in the quantity column, acre in the unit column, and then I've got the amount that it costs me per acre. So then I'm gonna have that value here, because 11 times 1 is gonna give me $11 total per acre. So you can see each one of those total values giving me a total fixed cost of $93. Total overall expenses then are my total variable costs up here of $417 plus my total fixed of $93 gives me a total expenses of $510. And consequently, it does give us profit because our revenue is $525. Our revenue minus our total expenses of $510 gives us a profit of $15. Okay. So as we consider those, we're going to start on crop budgets first. As we work through your lab for this week, that's what we're going to focus on, is getting you to finish up your crop budgets for your operations. So we'll do one for practice together on WebEx on our lab time on Tuesday, and we'll practice one together. I'll give you an idea of how to get started on setting up your budgets, and then we'll let you kind of work through setting up your crop budgets for the week. Then next week, when we do our lab, we'll work on our livestock budgets and adding a partial budget to that. So we'll just kind of keep stepping through our budgets as we move through and work a little bit further. So rather than start in this video on explaining how to do a livestock budget, because they are a lot more difficult, we're going to focus on the crops right now, and then you'll have an additional video that will describe livestock budgets for you.